Ready?
Ready.
Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, I have two gentlemen here with me, one by the name of Benjamin B., who we all tend to know rather well, and another guy by the name of
Matthew Anderson.
Matthew Anderson.
The knife.
The knife.
First things first, thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in on the podcast app. And, if in the end, obviously, this message brings you hope or you know somebody that could benefit from this, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to myself, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com, Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And what we will do is we will probably ask you for your phone number. We're going to want to have a phone conversation because you can't have meaningful conversations via email, right, Ben?
Absolute truth. Let me tell you real quick. Got a phone call from this and on Monday, and it was a very difficult sounding situation. But by having that phone call, it was stuff that couldn't be done through email. Over the course of a half hour, got enough information to come up with a solid game plan. Young lady sounds to be on her way to be getting help. A phone call makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
Can't have a meaningful conversation through email.
Nope, you cannot. All right, so let's jump right into it. We have Matt here. Matt, thank you for coming on to the show.
Anytime.
All right, so Matt, we had you on. Obviously, we have Eric who works here at Rock, and he came up to Ben and I, and he said, "Hey, I got this guy that would probably be pretty good on the podcast." And we're like, "Oh, tell us about this guy." And he tells us about you, and he says that, you have a good message, and he said you've been through a lot, but he didn't give us a lot of details. And listen, from my perspective, if it's coming from Eric, it's a viable thing, so that's how the connection was made. Glad to have you here. I think for the viewers, for the listeners, this is going to be a message of hope in the end, because as we're going to find out, Matt has a story that is going to resonate probably with a lot of you. And hopefully by the end of this, you can understand that this whole recovery thing is possible for everybody.
100%.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it, Matt. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, where you're from, all the happy stuff, and then it's organic conversation.
Cool. So my name is Matthew Anderson again, and from Wilmington, Delaware. And that's where I was born and raised at, in Wilmington, Delaware. Spent a lot of time as a juvenile and in my adult life, over about 17 years of my life in prison. Actually, that's kind of all I have to say with when it comes to what created me. I thought like the things that made me an alcoholic and a drug addict were like the trauma that I went into. You know what I mean? I thought that's what it was. I thought it was because my dad beat me growing up and mom was at the door begging him to stop. I thought it was because of my friends ran when I got stabbed. I thought it was because of my house burning down or spending the shooting someone under the influence, and that's what happened. So when we do the biopsychosocials, I thought that every time that the reason I was like I was because of the trauma that was in my life. So I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, a lot of group homes, inside and outside of institutions, mostly before something actually happened to me. Now I realize that none of that stuff is true. None of it makes me an alcoholic or a drug addict. None of that stuff. What makes me an alcoholic and a drug addict is that I pick up and I just can't put it down. Because I know tons of people that are just like me that had the same or different upbringings. They came from money. They came from nice neighborhoods. They didn't have any trauma in their life. They went to college, all of those things, but they have the same thing that I have. They pick up one and can't put it down. So I know that it's not the behavior, even though the trauma may have been like part of the reason that I may have started, right? But it's not the reason that I'm unable to stop or unable to stay stopped even when I do stop. You know what I mean? It's a rock in a hard place, rock recovery in a hard place, So it was a tough position to understand that that's what happened to my life. I didn't know that that was what it was. I didn't have anybody explain the things to me. And the things that I tried in order to stop were, I didn't try to go to prison, but I spent a lot of time in the institutions. I would spend years, like I wasn't like a 30, 60, 90-day guy. I would do some violent acts, and that's where my behavior took me, was to violence, and then I would end up back in jail wondering how I got there again. But it wasn't any of those things that created me. So I've started to understand that maybe the trauma was not what caused it, but no one explained it to me. So I tried to change girlfriends. I tried to educate myself. I studied Terrence Gorski. I had a pocket full of index cards with my triggers on it. I even thought that I tried recovery because I went to some meetings. I thought that that's what recovery was about, was you go to a meeting, and the more you go to meetings, the better off, you are. I tried to get sponsors. They told me to find somebody that had what you want, so I looked for the guy that had all the stuff, because when I come in the door, you don't know what that means. What do you mean, have what I want? That means physical or materialistic stuff to me when I'm walking in the door, So I thought I tried all of this stuff. So when I came down here, I even tried just selling drugs. I actually even tried to have a kid to stop, man. I actually thought that if I had a child, I would be able to stop using and abusing drugs, and my life would get better, because I would have this like beautiful sensation that my child was much more important to me, and therefore I wouldn't use anymore, and that didn't work for me either. So I realized over time, when I came down here, it was actually me and my girlfriend, Crystal Ann Lachette, God bless her soul. She passed away about 5 years ago, September. And so when we came down here, to be honest with you, I'm a 4-time violent convicted felon in the state of Delaware. So I was kind of like coming down here just to either spend the rest of my life in prison, right? Could get away from Delaware so I don't spend the rest of my life in prison, or I was coming down here to die. Like, I already knew that that's what was in store for me. I've been dead at every hospital from Camden, New Jersey, to North Philadelphia, to Christiana in the state of Delaware, all the way down here to Good Samaritan in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I've been flatlined at all of those places more times than I can count, So I guess what happened to me was like, I had a spiritual experience. And that's just the truth of it. I came down here, resigned to die or spend the rest of my life in prison. My thoughts were, if I came to Florida and if I got a charge, I might make it home. You know what I mean? Like, that was the idea. But because I'm not in Delaware, so maybe they won't figure me out. Maybe they won't know my record, and I might make it home when I catch a charge. And I came down here, and I was sitting in this rehab down here, man. And like I said, I already had given up on myself, which was, like, in all honesty, the best person and the best thing that ever happened to me was giving up on me, to stop figuring out that I had the solution to the issue, And this guy came in, little black dude about this, from southern Georgia, and he had a bald head, and he was older, and I ain't had nothing. He never went to jail, and he never had nothing in common with this guy, and he came into the rehab that I was in, and I thought that, that this dude couldn't help me because we didn't relate. They told me to find somebody that has what you want, and to me, I didn't think this man had anything that I wanted, but he was the only guy that they would let in a rehab. So I decided to ask him to sponsor me. Actually, it was an 18-year-old kid in there that asked him to sponsor him first. And since I'm Captain Recovery, in the rehab, of course, I got to ask him to sponsor me too, because I can't let the 18-year-old punk get the sponsor and not me. So I asked him to sponsor me, and I went up to him that day afterwards, and he agreed to sponsor me. And as I was walking to his van with him, I just was honest with him, and I said, listen, if you're going to tell me to read something for 30 days or like call you every day, I'm going to be dead. And I never meant something like I meant that in my life, like there was nothing in my life that I meant like that, because I've been dead everywhere, and I just didn't want to end up dead anymore, And I knew that if you were going to I needed a solution to my problem, and I needed it immediately. So that guy sat down with me, man. And he sat down with me, started to break down this step program. And I was kind of like, because I thought the 12 steps were just something you go to the meetings and that's it. That's how you do it. I never knew that it was a 12-step fellowship in the meeting and you should probably work the 12 steps in a 12-step fellowship. That never made sense to me. I never understood that. It's kind of like people that do that is like going to a barbershop and getting a haircut and watching somebody else. It's like me going to a barbershop and watching you get your haircut. And then when it's my turn, I'm like, nah, Ben, you go, you know? It's like nobody wants to sit and get a haircut, you know? So I sat there and he started to talk to me about this 12-step thing. And I was kind of like, I tried that already. Because remember, I told you I went to meetings and I've been to rehabs and detoxes and counseling and therapy and changed girlfriends and changed my environment and done all the things that, you know, I thought was having kids and everything to try to stop. And none of that was effective. And I was like, I'm sure this dude isn't going to be able to help me. But he said, no, we're not going to read anything for 30 days. We're going to start reading immediately, and you're not going to call me for 30 days. We're going to start the process immediately, and that's exactly what he did with me. And he started to break down to me the first step of like going into like the powerlessness and, you know, how was my life unmanageable physically? And physically, it was you know, not just going to, you know, not like losing weight, but actual physical. Like, of course, I lose weight. I go to detox, you know, and a lot of you guys that are watching this probably can relate to this. And if you can relate to these things, then you are probably like us, you know. And if you are like us, then there is help for you, you know, and that's the truth. And it starts here, you know, with, like they said in the beginning, with a phone conversation and an email just to reach out. But what he told me was, because I'm the guy that goes detox and I hold my shirt up and I think I got a 6-pack. You know what I mean? You ever been that dude? You ever went to?
Not me.
Thought you was a 6-pack?
I never had a 6-pack.
You never did that, Ben? You ever?
A junkie 6-pack,
right?
Yeah,
Exactly. But it's actually my ribs, right?
Exactly. The stem fast diet.
Exactly. So I'm in the rehab, pulling my shirt up like I got a 6-pack, and it's actually my ribs. My face is sunk in. You know, all the physical components, we started to talk about that from like in the doctor's opinion, all the way to like from page, you know, 1 to 23. That's what we discussed, and how I was physically unmanageable. And I thought the unmanageability meant like I lost my car or my kids or my, you know, job or my husband or spouse or whatever. And now I know the physical unmanageability is that, you know, and if you ever did this is probably something you want to talk to somebody here about. I'm never going to do this again. I swear I'm done. Remember that? Like, I remember that feeling. I'm never going to do this again. This is over. I'm done. I would slap whatever I had left on the table. I'm finished. And then I wake up and my bones are crawling out of their skin. And then all of a sudden my physical being, I'm sweating and I'm profusely, and I have, like, I physically need to go get another one. You know, and that was like, I resonated with that. I was like, oh my gosh, that is me. And then he said, well, what about the mental part of the unmanageability? And I was like, well, what does that mean? You know, I don't understand what you're saying. Of course I'm mentally, because I go to jail and I can't think straight. I can't sleep. I can't eat. And he's like, no, that's all the physical stuff. He said the mental unmanageability. And then he broke down that to me. And I understood what that is. And how he broke it down was kind of like, for me, it sounds like this. I get out of prison or rehab or detox or wherever it is, and I'm talking about completely physically separated. You know how many times that we tried these things before and you've been completely physically separated, you know? And there's nothing in my system. I have, you know, you can take a hair follicle, you want a blood test, I can pee in a cup for you. There's nothing in my system, completely clean and sober, off of every substance. And then all of a sudden, for me, it sounds like this. However, your lie is your lie. But I think to myself, I'm on my way out of jail. I get out of jail and in the parking lot of probation, because in Delaware, if you're on level 3 probation, you're getting a urine analysis every single day. Every day, you're getting a urine analysis. Or every week, And when I went in, I'm sitting there and I tell myself in the parking lot of probation, I say to myself, and this is completely clean. Years clean in an institution. I mean, mandated clean, but I was clean. So I have nothing in my system. I'm in the parking lot of probation, and I tell myself this: as soon as you pee in this cup, Matt, you got 7 days before you got to pee again. And I believed the lie that I failed at 100 times before. I have thousands of consequences that's a lie. I got thousands of experiences that tell me that's a lie. And yet I believe the lie that I tell myself, whatever that is, whether it's I'll just do it 3 days, or I just won't do it 3 days in a row, or, whatever the lie is, you tell yourself the same lies that we all tell ourselves. And I was like, wow, that is what happens to me. I've been clean, I don't know how many times in my life. And yet I tell myself some strange lie at the time to convince myself to use one, and I'll just do one. There was one specific time I said I'll just get a prescription. You was a prescription guy?
I'm an alcoholic.
This was the pill mill down here. So a lot of people. So we had prescriptions, and what I told myself was, well, I'll just get it prescribed. If I just get it prescribed, us addicts, do this stuff too. So I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, but I was like, I'm just going to get it prescribed. I get the prescription, and it says 3 a day, and I'm like, okay, three, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, it's 12:01, 12:01 now, 3, and then I'm like 3 more, and I just won't do none tomorrow, and then the bottle's gone. And I'm wondering, so it doesn't matter whatever I tell, and then I do those things clean. 100% nothing in my system to convince myself that I'll be okay. I tried alcoholically, right? When I thought that I'm not even kidding you. If I just put a lemon instead of a lime in the Corona, then it'll be different, because it's the lime that sets it off. It isn't the lemon that sets it off. I'm talking about some incredibly crazy things. So in my life, and this is just what happened to me, after recognizing that those things were the truth in my life, and I did suffer physically and mentally, and how my life was unmanageable, and we started to move into the second step, which, that no human power was able to help me with that. And not like when it says that, a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, it wasn't talking about the insanity of like, I lost my job and, I ain't paid the bills in 3 months, That's not the insanity that was described to me. The insanity was the lie when I'm sitting in the parking lot of probation, the lie I tell myself, where I tell myself I got 7 days. I need help with that insanity. The lies that I tell myself. Actually, it just happened to me about a year and a half ago. So my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend lives in North New Jersey, right? And she's about 2.5 hours from me. And I gotta roll past 2 places in order to get to her house, right? One of the places is Camden, New Jersey. I love to frequent Camden, New Jersey. I'm one of them guys, I love North Philly. That's another place. If I went the other way, I had to go past North Philadelphia and Kensington, Cambria, and all that stuff. So I'm like, and I'm going past, and I chose the Camden way, and I'm going past Camden, and I get this thought in my head, and it goes, bag of dope would be nice. Real quick. Just a real quick thought as I'm passing Camden by myself in my car, tell myself a bag of dope would be nice. And then the very next thought, God restored my sanity, man. And this happens to me, not quite often as it used to, thank God, right? But I know I have a defense, right? And how I build a defense is, we'll get to that. But my very next thought was, and I'm just, being honest when I say this, it said, bitch, you'll be dead tonight. And that's the truth. That's the truth. God helped me to remember the truth and not the lie in just one, where he actually helped me to remember that I would be dead if I went. So I'm in the car by myself, cracking up. I'm talking about hysterically, balls, laughing, right? And I'm sitting there cracking up. And I didn't have to call nobody or nothing like that, but I did call my brother, and I told him about how God restored my sanity, which was a powerful thing. But that's what I need help with. I need God to help me to restore my sanity when I start thinking that I can do just one and I'll be okay. you know?
We're kind of we are rolling into the solution here. There's a couple things I think we'll pick up where we just left off. You're on step 2. There was a couple things that really jumped out to me. When you're talking about 3 things have to happen in recovery. We have to talk about the problem. We have to talk about what the solution is, and then the program if you decide you want something to do with the solution. So with that being said, a couple things that jumped out to me. Somebody finally explained to you, and I'm guessing through the doctor's opinion of Alcoholics Anonymous, the allergy, the phenomenon of craving. I want to point out, going back to what Matt was talking about with he used to think just going to the meetings and doing the fellowship thing was the program, so to speak. Now, with that being said, like I had the same experience. My sponsor sat me down. He said, I'm going to read this book to you. Every time it says stop and do something, we're going to stop and we're going to do it. When that happened, that was the first time I had been to treatment centers. And to be straightforward with you, I'm going to go ahead and I have to be responsible for my own recovery and my relapses, etc. But it boggles me how many people can go through treatment center after treatment center and no one tells them about this physical allergy, this phenomenon of craving. The doctor's opinion, which used to be a theory, which has now been proven fact through science. There's enough science backing it up. It's an absolute fact. I just wanted to touch on that quickly because when I do groups here on Tuesday night, and I just did this last week, went through the doctor's opinion of Alcoholics Anonymous with the clients the same way I would with the sponsee outside of treatment when I do my own 12-step stuff. But a lot of them had sat down and they said, oh, we've been through the doctor's opinion before. Da, da, da. Someone told me to read it in detox, and that stuff was better than the Seroquel they gave me. It put me right to sleep, right? Read it to them. 10 of them after group were like, we didn't realize that information was in there. You know, which version of the book do you have? Because that's not the one they gave me in detox. Point is, somebody had to break it down for me, and then I did for them. And I don't have any original material. I'm like
Takes
a parent.
an awake person.
So with that being said, like the contempt prior to investigation, also people will come into treatment and tell me, yeah, I've done 12 steps. That doesn't work. First thing I ask them, how many guys do you sponsor? Well, I didn't get that far. Oh, you didn't do 12 steps. And I'm not trying to be a jerk.
It's the truth.
I'm just throwing it out there like Matt was saying to hit home the point. Like the fellowship and the program are 2 different things. You got to do the work. You can't. It's the same as going to treatment.
100%.
You can't just show up, sit down in front of your therapist and not do the assignments they give you. Same thing with the 12-step room. Same kind of thing. There's one other thing that I want your take on. It jumped out to me. Maybe you could put a little more emphasis on it. I think you already said it well, but something along the lines of, you told the guy that you asked to sponsor you, the short little black gentleman, you told him, if I have to call you for the next 30 days, I'm dead. It drives me crazy. And I've heard this said, and I liked when I heard this. The sponsor is not the qualifier. You know, like alcohol, drugs has beat us into a state of reasonableness.
100%.
So with that being said, like, I don't know your take on it, but I go nuts when I see a newcomer and they get a guy that's like, call me for the next 30 days and then we might start working this program together. Dude.
Drives me crazy. So that's one of the most insane things that, but in all honesty, as you know, we all know that happens, you know, and I don't know, you know, those guys might not be like real deal alcoholics like us or whatever the case may be, but you know, I need a solution, and you know, we got this thing. It's not a race. Take your time. It is a race. I'm going to die, you know, if I don't do something about this issue that I have. And and I'm already at a point walking in the doors, you know, usually for me, when I'm walking into the doors, I'm already at a point that I know that a doctor, no matter how educated they are, and kudos to doctors, thank God for all that they do, right? But they're not equipped to help me with this issue, because if they were, I would have already been sober a very long time ago. Good Samaritan doctor, when I died twice in 6 hours, would have said, this is what you need to do, Matt, and I would have been fine. And sometimes, and just to go off subject for a second, we think that we're hopeless, right, until you really think about what the doctors like. And I do a lot of time and spend a lot of time educating like the general public, which what it tells me to do in 103. That's what it tells me to do. Go out and educate the general public, law enforcement, things like that, and let them know what we suffer from, because they do deal with us. They deal with us on a regular basis. The doctors, how do you think they feel when they're, us are coming in and we're dead and they're like, help my mom or my dad, and kids are crying and significant others are crying, and the doctor has no solution to this issue. There isn't no magic pill. They get your vitals stable when you OD and they send you home, But a lot of people don't understand it. So just to go off topic to say, it is so important that I immediately start working this program. And a lot of people, I've seen this too, which I'm sure we all have. People come in, they get a little job, and they start going to some meetings, and they tell them step a year. You ever heard that one? Work a step a year. Are you kidding me? I'll be dead in a year. There's no way I'll make it a year. So I need to get in there and out and in service. I was through the 12 steps and in service in 4 months. I was through and working with other guys, and that's just the facts of it. But people do that. They don't understand. It's like, oh, well, you don't know. We do know. Everything in our book tells us to be making the approach to the newcomer. Everything tells us to be in service and us to take them through the same program of action. The same program of action that I'm trying to outline here today, which is kind of what we're doing here, is outline a program of action that saved and changed not just my life, but your lives as well. The same thing that happened to me happened for you, and we followed the same exact process.
Yeah.
Nothing changed from the process that you followed and I followed, and it's the same process, and yet we're all here doing very similar things, right, with our lives and being in service. You guys have dedicated your entire lives to what you do, and I respect and, love you guys from being on the opposite end or on this end of things, where I have dedicated my life to God and serving others as well, but not, in the same field. But it doesn't even matter. Like, that's just what we do. We find where our niche is. We find where God's gifts have given us, and then we go into it, It's beautiful, man. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on those couple of things. I think that was it that I picked it. There was a couple other things, but my memory. But anyway,
I wanted to get into Matt, I wanted to know your perspective from clients. Well, I'm so used to saying clients. Let's just say recovering addicts or people that need recovery. What is your take on them whenever they have issues or they draw issues of a 12-step program? Why do you think that is? And I have a couple people in mind that, are so anti 12-step, whether it's AA, NA, CA, whatever A. If it has the 12 steps, if I have to get a sponsor, if I have to do any of that stuff that you're going to ask me to do, no thanks. Why do you think that is?
Just haven't been, just like Ben really stated well, was that they just weren't beaten into a state of reasonableness yet. For me, I had to be literally broken, and it's tough. And I'm just, when someone's broken, hopeless, in a tough spot, not knowing where to go, right? That is like the best place for someone to be. It sucks when you're there, I know, but it's the best place for me to be, because then I'm open. I'm open to have this conversation and know that you obviously know what you're talking about and I do not, or I would be, so lots of, but truthfully, did you get it on your first shot? Did you get it on your first shot?
he did.
Did you?
Well,
You went to one rehab, boom, out and done?
Yep.
Word, that's what's up. That is typically not the story, though. You do understand that being here.
It's 99. I'm one of the
You're one of the, you're like a
percenters.
freaking unicorn. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And
There's
then you
not
got
many
the
of
blue lights around you. So that's it. So yeah, that's typically not what happens. Typically, people come in and they're just. For me, it was in and out, in and out. You would think that dying, I die, literally flatline. Get out of the hospital, and my very first thought is, where's my wallet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but at the same time, all of those things, all of the rehabs, all of the detoxes, all of the struggles, trials, and tribulations, all the women in my life, my friends in my life, my family all of those things have gotten me to a state that I'm in now, of understanding that I had to try. For me, I'm just hard headed, and a lot of us are. Most of us are super hard headed and got to try every other solution or reason or way before we get to understand that we do not have the answers.
I guess if I were to speak on that in terms of, because it is hard to believe for especially me now, we're doing this for so long. I mean, the vast majority of people have to go to numerous treatments, rehabs, whatever. I think for my situation, and I grew up backwoods, Pennsylvania, I guess I would say I have relapsed, I haven't gone to treatment. I went to treatment one time. But numerous times did I tell myself what you said earlier, this is it. I'm not doing this no more. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Tonight I'm going to drink 6 beers and that's it.
Done.
And then tomorrow I'm turning over a new leaf, Ben. Mark my words. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. And then, I never, ever, ever proved that I could do that. Or, I would drink the 6 beers. It'd be the biggest ones. These bars, they were 35-ounce frosted mugs. I mean, you needed 2 hands to lift these puppies. But I had 6 beers, and I would go home and I'd wake up the next day and I would say, I'm okay. I'm going to be good. But I'd take a Xanax. As long as I ain't drinking, though, I'll be all right. I'd take a Xanax, get me through work, and I was working on cars, customers bringing vehicles in, and they're entrusting me to change their brakes on their cars and stuff, and I'm zannied out,
He got
Point
let go.
is, there has been numerous times in my life where I would tell myself, I'm not going to drink tomorrow, and I drank tomorrow. There's been times where I said, I'm not going to drink for a couple of days to prove to you, my dad, it was just him and I. It was just me and my dad my whole life, just to prove to him, because he'd come down on me hard, 22, 23, 24. I went to treatment at 26. Every night I'd come home. He'd get on me. You need to stop this shit, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, listen, to prove to you, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not going to drink for 2 days. And when I don't drink for 2 days, I don't want to hear your shit no more. And I wouldn't drink for 2 days to prove to him and to prove to myself that I wasn't an alcoholic. And then that third day,
just to say I did it.
Just to say I did it. And that third day, I made up for lost time. And I remember a guy, he gave me my first big book, because after I proved that I couldn't be trusted working on cars, they moved me into sales. Because sales, you go whatever, you do what you want there. You're gonna sell cars, you can do whatever. And this guy Cricket, God rest his soul, Cricket, I think he's dead, I don't know, I'm sure he is. He gave me my first big book, and it turned in, and I was probably 24. Ben, I don't even know if I ever told you this.
No, I've never heard this story.
It was in the bottom drawer in my bedroom, and I specifically remember he gave it to me when I was 24 years old, and it sat in that drawer till I was 26. And the only time I would get that book out is when I would come home just filled with guilt and shame. And I knew I can't stop. This is something that is, and I bought in to the idea of, this is just who I am. And I'd pull this book out, totally plastered, like seeing double, I got the one hand up on the wall to prevent the spins. It's 15 degrees out. All my windows are open.
What is this book?
Yeah. And I'm like pretending to read this book, but there was a sense of, but I do remember when I would get that book out, there was a calming factor there, because it was almost like I knew this was my way out, but I wasn't ready to do it, and then rest assured, I got a DUI, totaled my car, got fired from my job, and went to treatment and got exposed to fortunately, where I went to treatment in Jacksonville, you go in, you got a 12-step book, you got a big book. And I mean, this goes back 2010.
They gave you the book there?
They gave me the book there. They gave me the book there,
They should
and
be doing that everywhere.
The counselors that were there, everybody was very big into 12-step. And I read that book at first, cover to cover. That's what I thought you did. You just read from the beginning to the end.
Like a novel, right?
Yeah, read it like a novel.
No, that was one of the first things my sponsor told me.
Man.
He said, "This is a textbook." Ben, do you know the difference between a textbook and a novel?
Yeah.
And I didn't know the answer. He told me a textbook is meant to be studied.
Yeah. And that's what I did. I read it from cover to cover and just kind of, but it wasn't until I got out and flew to West Palm. And then I went to this halfway house, and this guy comes and tells me, you got to get a sponsor. And I'm like, I already did all this. I already did all that stuff in treatment. I'm just here, this is my new home.
I'm gonna get a better job.
Yeah, so
make some money before I get out of my
job and yada yada yada. And they have different plans for me,
Yeah,
So
yeah. Or having issues.
Tom had asked about people's resistance to work in a program.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was a couple things that came to mind for me. I'll just be straight up with the one that I've seen the most. I'm just going to shoot it like it is.
Mm-hmm.
People are lazy. In fact, the big book tells us we're undisciplined. People just aren't willing to do the work. You say that there's a book you got to read, something you got. When it comes time to get a notebook and a pen, people are out.
Yep.
You watch the same thing happen with therapists. Like, they'll sit there, talk about their feelings all day. As soon as the therapist gives them an assignment, next thing you know, weeks go by and the therapist's like, we're not moving on till you're done with your assignment. And they just don't do it. They're lazy. That's all there is to it. Be straight up. The other part, and I think this is where you were going with this, Matt, is people aren't getting the right message. Where did it get watered down? What happened? Like I said earlier about how I'd been to so many treatment centers and nobody told me about this allergy and information that's in the doctor's opinion, for instance. And that's just one small sliver of the stuff I didn't learn in treatment.
Yeah.
I went to treatment and gave them 1,000 reasons why I was powerless over alcohol and made this list of basically consequences, which consequences don't get me sober. Looking back at no harm, no foul, the therapist and her efforts, so to speak, but making a list of consequences was clearly not going to keep me sober because it didn't matter what consequences happened. Like you said earlier, I'm going back out, like whether I wanted to or not. So yeah, what's happening there? Like, how are people not getting the message? And I'll just be straightforward. I think a big part of that has to do with treatment centers getting involved. A therapist is going to fix you in 30 days. Like, people are under the impression I go to rehab, I check out, I'm cured.
It's become a big industry, So I did this talk, right, for it's a nonprofit in the state of Delaware. It's through the Newcastle County Police Department. It's called Hero Help, right? And through Hero Help, these dudes, I went in there to talk to them, to educate them on what we suffer from and stuff like that. And when I explained to them the allergy, right, and what happens and how, like, it doesn't matter what, you can put me in a rehab, and they're like, well, what do we do, And that's the truth. People don't know what to do. And it's not just lazy on our end, because we are, right? But it's lazy on the other end too, where we are given these new treatment centers and new programs and, doctors getting involved and big pharma and all that stuff are getting involved. And it's kind of, and it's just the real facts of it, All these people are getting involved, and they're given the impression that this is the way out. This is what you need to do in order to stay clean. You come to rehab, you go to this specific rehab. Oh, go to Malibu Passageways or, Father Martin's Ashley, which I've been to, right? And none of those things, it doesn't matter what the facility is, but we can't give people the impression that this is how you recover. If the facilities and most people, right, and if the general public is educated enough to know and say, listen, the only thing that a rehab, detox, centers like that, right? You're talking about inpatient centers. Mm-hmm. The only thing that they can really provide you with at that time is physical separation. That's it. They can help you with the physical element of what you suffer from to clear your mind, right? So you can be in a better position to obtain what we have to offer when you leave, you know? And they tell you to go to meetings and all that stuff, but they're not carrying the message. So when I sat in treatment, I was under the impression that if I just went to therapy and I talked about my most, substantial stuff that happened in my life, that I was, something magical was going to happen, and I therefore wouldn't use alcohol anymore. And that's just not the case, man. So it's up to us. And then we got this part in the groups. So say someone they get physically separated and they ended up in a good spot, right, where he was at. So, and I do get physically separated and I go out and they tell me to go to a group and I do. Then I go to this group that's telling me, just do 90 and 90, man. Put the plug in the jug, just don't pick up.
What's 90 and 90 for listeners that might
90,
not know?
90 meetings in 90 days, put the plug in the jug. If you don't pick up, you can't get high, or what, all these crazy cliches where they're not carrying the message, and it's up to us, the people who have recovered, to to join a home group, to get into these home groups, and to make sure the message, like, you got people that are like, yo, I'm chairing this month. Let me get my homie from the halfway house to speak. Like, that's not what we do at a meeting, That's not what a meeting is about. A chair has the most powerful job. The group is the most powerful entity for carrying the message. And I'm not talking about the meeting. I'm talking about the home group members. We are, like, say we're in a home group. We are the most powerful entity to carry the message. So say, Ben, you're going to chair this month. Your job isn't to, go get a homie or find somebody outside the meeting the day of. Your job is all week. You're going around, you're listening to speak, and you're watching, podcasts or whatever, and you're seeing somebody with the 12-step message, and you're like, yo, can you come to our group and speak? You want somebody that's on fire with this thing, that's on fire with the spirit, that has had, obviously, you can look at their eyes like I can yours and tell that you have had a spiritual experience as a result of the same thing that I went through, right? Can you come to our group and carry the message? And then when a newcomer walks in, that's what they hear. That's what we want. So when they get out of rehab, and that's another big thing, is most people don't get it, right? Or and you're like the unicorn, is because they're not hearing the right message. If they go into a group like we just described, let's say a newcomers, right? You get a whole busload of newcomers. They walk into a group like that, and there's me, you, and we're all up there, right? And we're all carrying the message, and they walk into this, powerfully, and not saying like, oh, I'm the man. I'm just talking about, like, that when someone's on fire with the spirit, you just know it. And we got that person up in the group, and all these newcomers are in there, and they're outlining the program of action on exactly what happened. They're going to be more in tune to do it. And I also say this in response to what you said about people getting the pen and then, putting the work away, right? I have learned over time now, I've had more people go out now on 9 than 4. That's the truth. Like, they're objectionable. Now we get to the action part.
Step 9 is making amends.
It's making an amends. So they're like, I get more people that they'll do, and the reason they do 4 most of the time is because I'm not pushing them, but I will sit with them. I tell my guys, right, or my sponsees, right, sponsorship is what we described in the beginning. And when someone calls me, I'm telling them to call me every day, not call me every day and just, and talk about whatever. We can do that too. But I'm saying, call me every day. If you're free and I'm free, we'll meet. I don't care if that's 5 days a week. If you're a sponsee and you're trying and you're like, yo, let's do this. You don't even have to read, when we talked about that, we'll read it to you. And then when they get into the work, I still have them do that, and I'll come and I'll sit down with them, and we'll start from the beginning. We'll read, like, say we're in, first 3 column stuff. We'll read first 3 column stuff, boom, jump into it, and I'll sit with you,
Yeah, I'll touch on that too, because this is where a lot of misconceptions happen as well. You touched on it earlier that the sponsor finds the newcomer. And I understand how it's evolved and happened. Like in Palm Beach County, for instance, treatment centers galore. Let's call it what it is.
Everywhere.
You put the hands up in the room for the sponsors available. The people that need sponsors way outnumber the people sponsoring. And that's just because so many people are coming down here to get help. You got a lot of newcomers. But with that being said, I believe personally, like a lot of the times I'll go meet a sponsee more than halfway. You know, this whole
Absolutely.
thing with like testing people's willingness to
Yeah.
do this stuff. And don't get me wrong, there is a fine line. Like I won't chase
Effective for some.
I won't chase somebody. I'll give them like a courtesy call and say, "Hey man, I feel like I'm putting more effort than you are. Are you bringing this?" But I believe in inspiring people too. Like
Absolutely.
hence why I like that you clarified it's a sponsor's job to find a sponsee, not the other way around. You know, because real quick, I'll tell this little quick story about Bill W. Dr. Bob. Bill W. and Dr. Bob had just gotten sober. They show up to a hospital, right? And in the hospital, there's a guy who had been committed for alcoholic insanity, and the wife is there. So Dr. Bob and Bill asked to talk to the wife. Hey, we'd like to talk to your husband if you'll let us. We have a cure for alcoholism, right? And the wife looks at Dr. Bob and Bill and says, you could try whatever you want. We've tried everything. I don't think that you're going to be able to cure him. And Dr. Bob and Bill turned right around and said, no. We're not going to cure him. He's going to cure us. Hence, they're the ones bringing the message. For a very poor way to put it, they're curing themselves, so to speak.
Yeah.
But like,
Service.
don't take that black and white. But you know what I'm saying? Like, they're doing the work, not for him, but for themselves, in an unselfish, altruistic way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing. Like, so much of this has been misconstrued. And don't get me wrong, because at Rock, like, you talked about trauma earlier. I agree with you 100% on everything that you said about trauma in the beginning of the podcast, where I used to blame everything, all my use, on my trauma. It was super convenient for me to do.
Oh, 100%.
You know, but with that being said, also, like, page 133 of the big book says God has provided this world with many fine doctors, psychiatrists, and medical professionals.
Use them.
You seek them. Most of them give freely of themselves. Not free anymore. You got to have insurance, cash, copay.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you know, the big book encourages people to seek medical professionals when it's needed. Bill W. went to treatment 3 times. You know, at Rock, like, we need to have, in other treatment centers in general.
Yeah, that's good. I don't want to get that impression that.
Yeah.
You know, that I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't want to get the impression that don't do those things.
Yeah.
They ain't going to work. It's for this specific
Correct.
issue. You can get all type of help through those things and utilize them the best you can. Just for you guys that are listening, I don't want you to get the wrong impression to think that, oh, I'm just, and stop going to your therapist or whatever the case may be. It's just for this, we have a solution that is unbelievable, and they can provide solutions to other things as well.
A really good example of what I keep seeing is treatment centers come out, and I'll just use the latest and greatest that I've heard of. I probably need to do more research myself, but there's this big push for ketamine in treatment centers right now. Like, and what does a good addict do? They look up, they Google ketamine treatment.
Where can I get that?
They literally think they're going to go take ketamine and all of a sudden be cured of their addiction. Mm-hmm. Like, I've sat there and had these conversations with people who are wanting to be sober that are convinced. And the treatment center itself is so focused on, let's call it what it is, dollar signs. How many people can I get in the door and give ketamine and get paid for it? And damn well knowing it doesn't work. Or like what? I maybe I need to see more, do more research.
Well, I think I this is where I tend to disagree.
Hit us with it, Tom.
Not that I'm 110% abstinence based, but just like we say with I would put the ketamine in the same classification as even Suboxone.
Yeah,
there's going to be people out there that listen. You've tried everything under the sun. You're 60 years old. You're going to die very soon. You've been going to meetings your whole entire life. You've, for whatever reason, probably the 3 of us here combined would not be able to come up with a logical reason as to why it's not working for you. You want to go down that path? Go for it. I do think that there are going to be situations in which it will, like the ketamines and because, I mean, if we look back in the 70s, and I guess this is a good place to say none of us are doctors.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are giving medical advice at all, ever. But with that being said, if you look back into, the 70s, they were using this stuff a lot. And it wasn't until Big Pharma come in and all this stuff was kind of pushed out. You have like the psilocybin, ketamines, like these things that
LSD, Bill W.
that help with
5 years
with depression and stuff like that. I do think there's a time and place for it. I do think that it would probably be more beneficial than we even know.
Nightshade.
Had we had the opportunity to be able to do it. Not saying that I would. Me personally, I'm not a psychedelic guy. Even if I don't want acid. I don't want nothing like it, I do think there's extenuating circumstances, though, to where that would be beneficial. But again, it's kind of in the same classification as in my head as the Suboxone, as the Kava, as the Kratom. Even, a lot of people now are using, doing the whole marijuana maintenance program, stuff like that. What we're saying is, and what has been our message for years at this point is, why? What does it add to your life? By going down this path, there is no logical argument, and I don't care who would want to debate this. I would do it every single day. You cannot debate that abstinence-based isn't the best way. So what is the path of least resistance to get from addict and alcoholic to free of all mood and mind-altering substances? My opinion is AA, NA, some sort of 12-step program. If you're fortunate enough to be able to couple that with a therapeutic process, that's going to be your best bang for your buck.
Yeah, so we don't disagree on that because he said, this is where I disagree. But we actually agree. What I was kind of getting at, and I guess I didn't say it clear enough.
I cut you off.
You're good. It happens all the time. No, if you listen back to the podcast.
I was like, he's saying the same thing.
If you listen to the previous episodes of the podcast, we talk about Suboxone. I'd rather have a kid on Suboxone talking to a mom than a dead kid. They'll always have the chance to get better, for instance. But kind of what I was getting at is running different pathways in congruence with, not just saying just take this ketamine. Now, maybe if you're doing ketamine with therapy with 12 steps, who knows? It might be a winning formula.
I'm gonna say I agree and I disagree because I work for I do some stuff with a nonprofit as well, another nonprofit, Fern Foundation. They do some stuff with completely abstinent based, kind of like what that's why I love the level that you guys are on, right? This is my vibe right here, but lots of people are going off of that kick, right? And I'm not an MAT guy, but I am to a certain extent, like you were saying. When it comes to a person who I was on Suboxone for 10 years before I could get off of it. Always knowing that if you talk to someone that's been on methadone for years and years, they're going to tell you it sucks.
It's methadone's a drug that brought me to my knees.
It is. So
point blank.
Suboxone was this. So the withdrawal for that was crazy. If it's someone that does not want to stop using drugs, right? Or alcohol, whatever the case may be. If you have no intention on staying clean, right, then yes, harm reduction. You should be on a MAT program, some medically assisted treatment. However, if you are trying to stay clean and change your entire life, right, and look at like Ben or me or whoever, and say, look, these are the people that I want to be like, right? If you do that, and that's what you want in your life, that's not medically assisted. If I don't want to use a substance, and that's another part that the treatment centers are having an issue with, because they're like, put anybody on it. This is an issue that we're having in the state of Delaware, and this is the truth, man. You can go in there, you can say, I do not want to be. I toured a clinic. I'm not going to say the name of the clinic. I toured a clinic. They asked us to come in there and tour when I was working with one of the nonprofits. I go in there and tour, and he's like, this is our window, right? And he's talking about the windows of where you come and pick your script up, your methadone in the morning, right? And he goes, and I asked him a question. He said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Absolutely, I got some questions." Because you're talking about my people. Like I'm for my people. So I said, I got a couple questions. Number one, when someone comes in here, right? I said, and they get a dirty urine, right? Let's say, because I've on maintenance programs, on both maintenance programs, methadone and Suboxone, I used drugs and alcohol.
Me too.
100%. To the fullest. So if you go in and they get a dirty urine and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "We still treat them." I said, "What if they get 2 or 3?" He said, "Well, it's case to case, but we still treat." And I'm like, "At what point do you say that this isn't working for you?" And I said, "Okay, how about this? Let's say someone comes in here and says, 'Hey, I don't want to be on a substance. I want to be abstinence free.' Do you have the type of doctors," and there are doctors that do this, that will say, "Yeah, you should take it anyway," because of the information that they're getting, right? And I'm just being real, man. The information that they're getting, they're like, "Well, it's it's proven information, and we have what do they call it? Evidence based, right?" And that's the main thing that they use is that name, evidence based, evidence based, evidence based.
We hear that with insurance.
Where are you getting your evidence from? Big Pharma? Where are you getting where's the evidence coming from? Is the evidence coming from the same people that are supplying the things to begin with? So even the doctors are misinformed, and a lot, just like you and I can be misinformed if we listen to if someone came in here super educated right now and he was a professor at, geometry or whatever the case may be, right? And he comes in here, he's like, "I'm a professor at geometry." You and I are going to be like, "Yo, this dude knows what he's talking about," Even though he might not know everything, right? And he might be misinformed with some stuff, but he has this certificate, so it sounds great, and I listen to him. And that's kind of like where our society is going, If you're educated and you've been in these things, right, you are able to, prescribe or do things and help people that you really shouldn't be involving yourself with. I went and talked to Big SAMHSA. Right, we had some SAMHSA people there. DSHA were there. Right, we had a lot of different. We did this event. Right, it was a recovery bus. You guys might have heard of that. This dude drives around the country on this recovery bus. I can give you some numbers too. So maybe he'll come out. It's pretty cool. Maybe he'll come out here. But he does this thing all around the country. Right, so he comes up and he gets the politicians and the people, the council together. Right, and we did this at Journey Church up in Delaware. Right, so to get all of it together, it's all on the website. It's a Firm Foundation Facebook page. You can go on all that stuff, and it'll show you this event of this place, right? So he goes on there, and we have all this stuff. So I'm one of the speakers, right? I'm one of the summit speakers for there. I go in there, and this is the truth of the facts. And I'm trying to talk to this lady, big MAT, right, and all that stuff. And I just said this, and this is just the bottom line. I said, I didn't get ignorant or, I don't debate with nobody because I do believe in it to a certain extent. The people it should be there. It's here. So obviously God got a reason for that, because it's here. Mm-hmm. So I told her, I said, my brother Joey, my brother Joseph Anderson has had double hip replacement, 2 femurs, right? And he got 2 new hips and femurs, right? Because his bones were disintegrating, alcoholism, right? The same guy I told you was, end stage liver failure. I said, if I want to know what it's like to recover from a hip replacement, if I want to know what it's like to get and to recover from a hip replacement, I'm going to ask my brother Joey. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to ask someone who has had an actual experience with it, who has recovered from that, And I said, and it's kind of the same thing. And I was like, I'm not going to ask the doctor, "Hey, how did it feel recovering from a hip replacement?" The doctor doesn't know. He doesn't have an experience. He performed a surgery, And I'm sure not going to go to a doctor and say, "Hey, can you do my hip replacement? How many have you done?" And he says, "None," right? And I go, "Oh, well, I'm not going to say this is the guy, So I said, and it's similar with recovery. I said, I know how it sounds, and I'm trying to talk to these people and let them know, because that's what I want to do, is educate the general public. I love to do so, right? Because I think we all should be informed on what this thing really is and how severe it is. Our society, I mean, we have more ODs than ever before. People are dying left and right. People are losing their families. It has affected absolutely every single person on this planet, damn near every person in this country anyway, in some way or another. Rather directly or indirectly, you have had and felt or seen the results of what is going on in our country with the fentanyl epidemic. And I said, listen, all I want to say is, I know how it sounds. I know how it sounds, you know? You got all these degrees, you know, years and years of education. You're a professor, you know? You went through all this stuff, right? You got every degree in the book. And then you got Matt, right? Matt Anderson, 17 years of his life in prison, you know, an animal inside and outside of institutions, you know, a criminal, right? And I said, I know how it sounds, but I'm telling you, we have a solution and have recovered from something and can help other people unlike anyone else can. And that's the facts. They try to get me in ministry, Ben, at home, and I do speak at churches, and I do some preaching and stuff like that. And I ain't going to get into the religious aspect of things, but I do that, right, on some level. And when they ask me, they're like, man, I'm telling you got to get the ministry, right? And I'm like, I am in ministry. This is the ministry. We help in the 12-step fellowships. We help the blind to see. We help heal the sick. We raise the dead, right? We feed the poor. We do all that stuff, right, in the 12-step fellowship. And it's the crazy thing is, when people go to church, for instance, right, they're going to church and they're looking for God. We help people find God that ain't even looking for him. You know what I'm saying? That is a powerful experience. What better job is there to have, rather you get paid from it or not, right? What better job is there to have than to be helping other people in our community? And aren't we the people that you would want helping people in the community? The people who have actually had an experience, a hip replacement, so to speak, you know, that have already recovered from such an ordeal and that can help other people. You know, and that's where I think that our society is grown, you know, real callous to, is allowing us to be, you know, who we can be, you know, instead of just chalking this up and say, oh no, Matthew Anderson is a criminal and he's got all these years in prison. What could he possibly have to offer? You know, seeing what the work I do in my community on an altruistic level. I'm not like, hey, look at me, running around filming movies, you know, trying to get people to see what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, they actually see the change that's happening in the community and ask us. Like, yo, they should be asking you guys, what can we do? They should be asking us, what can we do to help? You know, what can we do to help you guys help people? You know what I mean? Because obviously we don't have an answer. And just to wrap it up with this, if the MAT thing, right, was the end all be all, how they're pushing it on people, not just pushing it. That's okay if you're pushing it on people that don't want to stop, but pushing it on people that actually want to stay abstinence-based, right, which is the number one way, right? No doctor or anybody can deny that, right? And instead of pushing that and come and say, look, what can we do to be useful to you guys? You know, that would be beautiful for us. That would make us powerful, you know, examples to our community. We can help doctors. That's why we all should be coming together, you know, and educating each other on what we suffer from, so we can actually battle this and not just pushing stuff, you know, that is ineffective. And if it was so effective, why are there more ODs and deaths now than ever before if it's effective?
Fact. And Matt's not speaking fiction. You were talking about the methadone clinic, the window, and you asked what happens when you relapse, what we treat them. My personal experience with that, when I was on the methadone program for about 2 years, the only drug test I passed was the first one, and that's because I was in a hospital detox. I failed every UA after that. With that being said, literally their response. They had the same philosophy. They continue to treat you indefinitely. You couldn't fail your way out of this program. But you fail a drug test for heroin, which I did every single time. You know how they treat it? Well, we need to up your dose 10 milligrams. Well, we need to up your dose 10 milligrams. So every time I took a drug test, Ben, the drug addict, got another 10 milligrams of methadone on top of it. To the point where my dependence on opiates was the highest ever because of the methadone clinic. Well, and my own addiction. Obviously, I play.
So happy we got somebody who can speak on that with an experience.
So the most the most physically debilitated I was in my entire life to any substance was through that methadone program, hands down. Like the heroin could not touch my tolerance for methadone. Which I will say this, harm reduction. I think I wanted to be sober. It sounded like a good idea, but the amount of heroin I was shooting, the methadone did keep me from dying. Because my tolerance was so high that like I'm pretty sure there was no way to die, But like literally, when the day came, I remember I walked into that methadone clinic. I was so physically broken, like spiritually, mentally. I could tell my body from the methadone and the heroin combined was falling apart. Things weren't functioning properly. Like I was like, oh my God, what does this come to? I remember going in there, being at the window, tears down my face. The lady hands me the cup of methadone, and I'm just staring at it for like 30 seconds. And I just threw it in the trash right in front of her. She's like, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not taking it. Fuck this. And I freaked out, and they sent their therapist running after me down the hall. I was like, I want to be off this stuff. Can you help me do that? And they pretty much... They didn't give me an answer, really.
Years.
Yeah, but it was a nightmare.
Years to get off.
It took me, and I did start tapering the next day because they actually couldn't give me that dose that day, so I shot myself in the foot and was sick. But, I showed up the next day, and they started bringing me down. I think it was like 2 milligrams every 10 days or something like that. Something ridiculous. The 10 milligrams every time I failed a UA. 2 milligrams down. It took forever to get to a point where it was tolerable, like a normal opiate addict, But to your point, yeah, man, like that was their solution for me. It put me in the worst physical dependence I had ever been in my life, hands down.
Same
Story.
Yeah, man. The Suboxone was I've been in a position with Suboxone of having, even in the institutions, I had people sending it under, I ain't gonna get into ways that I sent it in, but I had it coming in. I could not stay substance free for the life of me. I would do the maintenance and then go in and use and then be stuck. Can we switch it up a little bit? Can we switch it up to a spiritual experience?
Yeah, I'm with you there.
We can. We ain't got much time left. We got about 10 minutes.
Let's switch it up to how we have recovered and gotten to a solution to the problem and what actually happens. And I'll try to be as fast as I can, right, to try to brief up as much information as I can for you guys at home, and to actually give us an experience with what goes on. So when I was a kid, right, I had this issue, and this is how I believe that most of us put our spirits to sleep. So my dad had this gray thing. It was a metal thing, right? And he kept money in it. My dad kept money in this thing, and what he did was he was a general contractor, and I already told you how I felt about it. Like in the beginning, I kind of told you what went on at home. I hated my father. Could not stand my father. I wanted to do things to my dad. Me and my brothers used to plot on harming my father. So then my dad had this, so in my head, and I'm talking about before drugs and alcohol ever came into my play, I'm like 8, 10 years old, and Wayne had a mini bike down the street, and my dad had money, and I knew that I could buy this mini bike. I just had to steal the money from my dad. And my dad beat us anyway, so I was like, you know what, whatever. So I go in there, but remember that thing, right, when we were kids, it like we all had it, when I'm opening the metal thing and something inside me was like, don't do that, right? Like loud. It was like audible. When we were kids, that sound was much more audible and loud. You know what I mean? We were just like, but I did it anyway. And I felt guilty and ashamed, just like we all did, right? Whatever it was, usually.
Get on the mic.
usually sexual or something like that is what happened to us, right? So I take the money, I continue to take it until eventually, and I did that stuff so many times around the neighborhood and stealing from the comic book stores and the baseball cars. They used to have gum in the baseball cars, remember that? And I used to steal all the stuff from them, and until that sound just got quieter, or I didn't hear it as much no more. And that's kind of how I put my spirit to sleep. I ignored that feeling of don't do that. People called it our conscience, but then they also said if you hear voices, you're crazy, right? But I heard it. I heard it. It was loud and clear when I was a kid. That was God. That was God when I was a kid. People that have an issue with the God piece. When I was in a meeting, I'm trying to do this as fast as I can. There was this little ant traveling by itself. I was sitting down, I put my coffee down, right? And as I put the coffee between my legs on the floor, I see one little ant traveling by itself. I try to get this ant on my fingers, right? And he's doing like NFL running back moves on me, you know? So I end up getting a piece of paper and I scoop him onto the paper. I walk him outside and it dawned on me, I wonder what the ant's thinking. And the ant's probably pissed. Right? He's probably upset. This dude done picked me up and took me outside. Now I'm lost, broken. I was just trying to find some food for the queen, right? I was just trying to hang out with the fam. And now I'm in the middle of nowhere, don't know where I'm at, lost, broken, and hopeless. Would you agree?
Touche.
Check it out. So the ant's thinking and my thinking are not alike, you know? The ant's thinking and your thinking are not alike. So the ant has no idea that I walked him outside and put him on a piece of paper and took him outside because 50 people were about to walk in the room and somebody was about to trample on him and kill him, you know? So the ant doesn't know that. God's thinking is infinitely greater than my thinking is to the ant. He knows what he's doing even when it don't look like it. He knows what's going on. So all the people and that helped me a lot because I was like, why would he do this? Why would he do that? And it ain't for me to question because, my thinking is not even on the level to question what God's doing and why, you know? So I went through this process to wake my spirit back up, that same thing that I put to sleep. And how I did that was through inventory. The 4th step is what we call it, and that these gentlemen would so kindly iterate to you. And the 4th step was kind of like this. It was like, this is our store, right? And I'm at this store, and I've been at this store for 40 years. And you walk into my store, Ben, and you see moldy bread, rotten fruit, and sour milk, right? What do? You leave. There's 100 people out front. What do you tell them? Don't go in there, right? And then I'm mad at you guys for telling people not to come in my store because I feed my kids like this, in inventory, the 4th step, which people say is hard. And most of the people that are telling you that it's hard is because they haven't done it themselves. So they say, yo, don't go in there. And I'm pissed off. And I'm like, things start to happen like your cat ends up missing, right? Or, your windows get fogged up, or broken or whatever the case may be, because I do stupid stuff and resentments, right? And these are the things that block me: resentment, fear, sex conduct. So I got to clear them out just like I would with the inventory. So somebody finally walks into my store and says, Matt, have you done inventory? And I'm like, what is that? And for the first time in the 40 years I've been there, I walk from behind my counter and they show me, look at your bread, look at your fruit. And I'm like, just like you described in the beginning, where it has to be someone that's awake to read with me. It's not like I'm reading by myself and I get it. When someone's awake and they start to show me the things in my store, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been me all along. It hasn't been you. And I'm not mad with you guys anymore. I need to find Fluffy the cat, right? And replace the cat because I done, did things that I shouldn't have done, right? So now I need to go out and make an amends. I start making these amends and I start going to people like my dad, for instance, the guy who I thought that I hated and wanted to do things to growing up. My dad, now I go into inventory and I get into a 4th column of the 4th step, right? In inventory, which is the 4th step. And I go into there and I'm like, I see that I stole everything from my dad. I beat people just like he beat me. I robbed him. I broke like floors in his home, destroyed his house, punched holes in the walls, right? I had police standoffs at my dad's house. I'm in the newspaper smiling like this. I'm not even kidding you. That was my picture in the newspaper. Smiling after I shot somebody. And my mom and dad got to go to work. and face their employers and their boss and the neighbors and their family of the embarrassment that I caused on my mom and dad. I had cops come in my house and ransack my mom's panty drawer, bro, looking for stuff. And I'm angry with them. And it just allowed me to finally let go and then go to my dad and say, Dad, these are the things that I did. I've been irresponsible my whole life. I'd go to jail and I expect you to take care of me, you know? And when I got out, I expected you to have a place for me to come. And then I'm angry with you. And I said, man, these are the things I did. And my dad's starting to cry and I'm crying and we're like, you know, having this moment and I'm asking. And it was really uncomfortable to do these things and go out making the amends, right? Which is a ninth step. And then I go out and I make these amends and I'm telling him, I'm listing the harms and I'm like, is there anything I can do to make this up to you? And my dad says, just take care of yourself. And me and my dad are hugging out in front of my brother's house, you know, and like through these events and through recovery and through a 12-step abstinence-based program, just being real, when you really want to work a program, like through those events in my life, I have the best. My dad is my best friend. He's here. He's here, you know, he's in Florida with me. That is my man. I love my pop. I have relationships with the neighbors, the same neighbors that, you know, were trying to get their kids in the house when I'm outside shooting guns and there's police standoffs, right? That I went up, made amends to him. He used to have these 60-foot bushes, you know, to split the houses so we couldn't see him. They're cut down. They're 3 foot now. Like I have relationships with my neighbors, the same cops that I hated, I tried to educate. The same prison that I thought I'll never go back to, I go back into voluntarily to help others. Like this thing is the most amazing thing that ever happened to it. And we can all agree that it is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to us, you know? So it's really just working that program. It's much more than going and just getting abstinence, you know, and going to some meetings and forgetting about it. Like all these things happen for us, you know, if we actually do the program, the actual program of recovery. And that's a big thing too, Ben. Listen, T, when they tell us go to the rehab, and the rehabs are called recovery centers, you know? And of course I think that is a recovery center, and that's not it. I need to be in recovery, you know? Just because you think there's other ways of recovery, actual recovery is recovering from something, you know? You heal from it, right? You move on from it. You're not replacing it, right? I'm not getting a broken arm and then saying, yo, can you give me a different broken arm, please? You know, this one isn't working, you know? I need to heal from the broken arm, you know? So I'm happy, man. I'm honored to be here. Thank you guys, man, for having me, you know, and I appreciate it, man. Any questions? You know, you guys got, let's hit it.
Well, listen, we'll gladly have you on again. We've been talking for an hour and a half. So we will do a part 2 because I think there's a lot of stuff that we didn't cover that we're going to need to cover. I mean, we could talk for hours. We literally
absolutely.
How long are you going to be in Florida?
I'll be here until I'm leaving Tuesday morning.
And when will you be back?
Probably after the new year. Sometime January, maybe February. I'm usually always here in February anyway, because I'm a February baby. February 13th, 2017 is my sobriety date. And I used to go home and celebrate, but now I'm home. I come home to celebrate, you know, so I usually am down here around that time to celebrate anyway. But even if it's in the next few days, man, and you guys got time or whatever, just call me, man. You know, I'll make myself available. Okay. I'll do anything to make sure that people get the message and God's doing his work, man, whatever that looks like. I don't care. I don't care if I would have to fly out single, you know, and for a single day to come and do it, man. If it means something to people, I'm down. Straight up.
That's good. Ben, any final thoughts?
Keep going all day. There was so much there that we didn't touch on that we could have, but like, right? Most of our podcasts are what, 30 minutes, 45 minutes?
45, yeah.
There was a lot there, so
awesome.
I suggest
there's a lot more.
Hopefully you're hearing this
going.
part. You listened all the way through.
Yeah, they are.
I know, right?
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, man. God bless y'all, man. Thank you.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And in the end, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, about your specific situation, you can always reach out to myself or Ben. Tom.
They are the right people.
That's right. Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. That is it. We will see y'all later.